Hello class, this is Mr. Boersma, and I am going to show you some of the techniques in Por una cabeza for cello. At the very beginning, we have one of the most tricky things that we have to kind of figure out, and it seems very simple, but actually there are a few different ways to do this. That is, in measure 1, the first complete measure, we have pizzicato. Now, pizzicato can mean a couple of different things. First of all, we know we're going to pluck it. And I'm going to show you two different ways to pluck these quarter note pizzicatos. Here's way number 1, where I'm playing it exactly as it's written, and I'm letting the notes ring, which means I'm not stopping them, and I'm letting them fill out the whole vibration of the string. 3, 4. Notice how that G string continues to ring and ring and ring and make sound, even past the point that I've played it. That is one way to play it, and Mr. Tusi may want you to play it that way. It's a little bit easier, but there's a slightly better way that we can do it, and I think it would be super cool if we could all do this at the concert. And that's where we give it a little bit of a rhythmic stop between each note. Let me demonstrate first, and then I'll explain it. Did you see what I did there? It might be a little bit difficult, but what we want to do is as soon as we have plucked the note, we just gently let our finger rest against the string to stop the vibration. And that's going to give it that little bit of extra space in there. That sounds really good on a tango type of piece like this. So we have two different ways of handling those notes. I would try practicing the first way first, just so that you can get where your fingers are supposed to be to play the notes correctly. And then I would try the second, as you feel more comfortable with the technique. I'm going to move ahead now to measure 14, where we have our first little melodic fragment that we get to play. I'm going to demonstrate it once. It's a lot of notes to fit into a little bit of space there. We're playing this in first position. We started with the 4th finger on the G string. Continue. First finger extends. Then we have a shift up to what should be a pretty comfortable 4th position on the A string. Practice these passages slowly. Any passage that we have a nice melodic fragment that goes quickly, you are going to do yourselves a big favor if you practice it slow first. I would try it at this speed. Until you're confident you can nail every single note in tune every time. As you get more comfortable with it, you can start speeding it up. I recommend using a metronome when possible. Until you can get it up to the speed at which you are likely going to play it at the performance. Following the G on the A string, we're going to play E, A, and G. We're going to stay in 4th position for the E in measure 16. That's right here on the music. We'll play that with our first finger. Open A, shift back to first position, fourth finger on the D string, which I sort of anticipated there a little bit. I'll try that a little bit better for the video. Fourth position, first finger, open A, fourth finger, D string. We're going to want to connect those notes as beautifully as we can once you get it back up to tempo. And for those of you who are able to do vibrato, this is where you really want to let it come out and sing. Our next section, that is a difficult challenge, but one of the best sounding parts of the piece, in my opinion, is here at A. This is where we have what is called a triple stop. This is played at forte, so it's a nice loud dynamic, and it's okay to really pour some bow into it. A couple of important things. We would like for these notes to sound right on the beat. There shouldn't be a lot of rolling of the notes. You could think of these a little bit as a single double stop happening down here, immediately rolling up to the B flat. I'm going to demonstrate this measure. 1. Well, okay, I demonstrated 2 measures there, but you get the idea. I'm going to count out loud so you can hear exactly where these triple stops are supposed to land. They're pretty fast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Did you notice how the B flat sounds almost exactly on top of beats 2 and 3? We don't want to be late. If we're late on those notes, it's going to kind of drag the whole orchestra back. I think Mr. Tussi's talked to you about this a little bit, but it's something important to remember. For the technique of it, I recommend thinking about playing the double stop of the G and the D happening simultaneously, and then rolling up to the B flat and D. In slow motion, it works like this. So for just a moment, we pivot on the D string. Think about it like a seesaw. If the D string was the middle of a seesaw and the bow was moving like this, I would start down on the G string and go up to the A string. Finally, I'm going to leave just a little portion where I'm playing only the B flat alone. But don't worry about that too much. It's going to sound pretty well, even if you're playing the D with it. At speed, it will sound like this. Oops, no it won't. Because what did I forget? I have to come back down to get that G. And this is the other important part. I need to remember that I'm going to play 2 down bows in this measure. And here is where I'm going to give you the most important rule that you're ever going to hear in playing cello. Write things down in your music. Well, maybe that's the second most important rule after use a metronome, but it's up there. I'm going to show you. I'm going to draw a down bow here and a down bow here. They're not very pretty down bows, but you know what? That's okay. It's okay if my handwriting is bad. It's okay if things don't look exactly right, as long as I know, and my stand partner can read, that those are 2 down bows, and that will remind me that I need to play this. So much better. The next measure starts our next melodic fragment. And this is very important because this is our time to shine. You'll notice that there's a series of bowings in this music, and I think it'll probably be copied into your parts. But in case it isn't, you're going to want to pay close attention and write it down in yours. We're going to start this on an up bow. And this is in measure 20, right here. up bow. Okay, we have a lot of things happening in that passage there. It's a very lovely piece, and that's kind of our place where we get to say the melody.
Teachers and students, please excuse this interruption. Diego Gonzalez, please report to the front office. Again, Diego Gonzalez, please report to the front office. Thank you.
That part's not in the music, but you'll notice that here we start on a G. We're not going to play the trills or the anticipatory notes, these small notes here. We're going to go right on to G. Extended first finger. This is very important. If this is not in tune, it's going to sound really horrible with the rest of the orchestra. So make sure you practice your extensions. They're going to come in all over the place during this piece. We're going to extend one back for the B flat. We're going to play it again in the next measure. And this 2 on F natural is going to feel very high because it's still extended. Make sure that their notes are nice and in tune. Good. Now in measure 22, you'll notice our first note is an E flat. That is also extended. It's going to be in the same place that B flat was in measure 21. But we've got to rest. We can kind of give ourselves a second to get there. We start with a half note G in measure 23. Very important. We have a rhythmic change here in measure 23 at the end, where we have a dotted 8th note and a 16th note. That's going to come back and haunt us later. Pay close attention to it. It's very difficult to synchronize these things together as a section, and it's going to take some practice, but you guys can get it. From measure 23, starting on the G. Let me do that one more time just so you can see. Pay attention to the bowings that I've marked in. They're a little bit different than what comes on the original score, but I think they're going to make things a lot easier to synchronize with the rhythm. Let's try it one more time. Measure 23. Be very careful to extend far enough back on that B flat. Things continue pretty normally through until we get to letter B. You'll notice at letter B, we repeat our figure that we had at letter A. Make sure that you write in your bowings so that you can remember them ahead of time. Remember, the more you write in your music, the less you're going to have to think about when it comes time to perform it. And you can focus more on the musicality rather than trying to figure out, oh, am I supposed to play a down bow or an up bow? And what are those notes? You don't want to be doing that at a concert, trust me. To demonstrate, I've written 2 down bows. I look back here at A, and I see that there is a slur from the C to the D and an up bow. And I notice that there's a down bow and an up bow. Very good. The next section I would like to take a look at, we're going to skip ahead to 1 measure before C, or measure 33. That's down here. I've put in a fingering here that looks a little bit strange, but it's going to help this sound very smooth, and let us stay in first position. This is also going to be in extension. Notice where my 2nd, 3rd, and 4th fingers are going to be playing. Usually, if you were looking on the fingerboard here, we would be in closed position, at which point my 1st finger would be on the yellow tape, 2nd finger would be on the white tape, 3rd finger would be on the red tape, 4th finger would be on the blue tape. For our extended position, we are going to move our fingers down so that 2 is on the red tape, 3 is on the blue tape, and 4 is on the white tape. To make that happen easier, on the cello, when we extend, it's not just a matter of moving our fingers, it is also a matter of moving our thumb. I'm not sure if you can see this in the recording or not, so I'm going to turn my cello slightly to the side. When I do an extension, My thumb and my fingers let go, except for my first finger, which stays in place, and they all move down. It looks like this. Notice my first finger is staying exactly on its place on the tape. As my other fingers move down, it pivots just ever so slightly so that there's a little more space. If you were to look at my fingers, if this is my regular closed position, this is my extended position. Notice the distance between these three fingers does not change. It's only the distance between my first finger and second finger that opens. My thumb is always going to stay opposite my second finger, or possibly third finger, depending on how you feel it. Back to the music. In measure 33, we will play the B natural with our second finger, C natural with our third finger, and the C sharp with our fourth finger. That's going to let us play this smoothly. And in one bow, going over to the D string. Kind of a haunting little sound, right? All those little half steps right next to each other. The reason we do this is so that this can be a smooth transition to the D string, which is the other piece that we need to look at, how we're moving the bow. If I take my left hand out of the equation, this is what this looks like. Notice how smoothly my bow moves in one up bow. Think about playing on the G string and slowly rocking over to the D string. That's how we accomplish that. Again, this is how it sounds. The idea is that we want it to be a smooth transition between measures 33 and 34. We start measure 33 playing G on the D string with our fourth finger. We have a rest. That's when we can extend. Then our fingers are ready to come down. And in measure 34, we're already in place to play. At tempo, this will sound like this. This is something you'll probably need to practice a little bit to get it, but you'll get the hang of it. Next, at the end of measure 34, you're going to see some notes that look a lot like what we did in measure 33. But we only need to stay extended for the C sharp. We're going to do the same thing with the bow. Smoothly crossing from string to string. Something to avoid when making string crossings is the idea that you need to lift the bow to get to the next string. I'll show you an example of what it sounds like when you do that. It's not real pretty. It's really easy to lose control of the bow when we do that. Let's try it again. Staying on the strings, staying very relaxed. Very nice. I'm going to move ahead to one measure before D, where you're going to see that we have a very similar figure to what we just played in one measure before C. The same fingerings apply. We have an extended 2, 3, 4, and 0, but we have a different rhythm, which can sometimes freak us out, but don't worry. It's exactly the same fingering and exactly the same bowing. We just do it at a slightly different time. I'll play an example of how it goes. Not very different, right? We simply have the 16th and the dotted 8th rhythm that's different. Pay very close attention to this. There are a few places in this piece where we have the same notes but different rhythms, and they can be confusing. Let's try it one more time. But I'm going to start on beat 1 of the measure before D. B natural. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, our next challenge is going to come in measure 43. Measure 43 is the first place in this piece that it is going to be very necessary for us to shift into third position. Third position can be a little bit confusing. Just to make it easy for right now, I'm going to tell you that third position is where your first finger is playing G on the D string, which is normally where your fourth finger would be. To show you, on the fingerboard, here's G in first position. I'm playing it with my fourth finger. I am going to shift my hand till my first finger is playing G. That's where we are going to start. But there's one other complication. We also have to play this extended. So not only am I shifting, I'm also going to extend. And remember, the extension happens between our first finger and our second finger. I would try practicing this extension a few times, just to get a sense of what it feels like. First position G. This is third position G. This is the extension. Starting from there, this will sound like this. Notice I've written the fingerings down in my part already, and these fingerings correspond to being in third position. You'll notice if I were in first position, I wouldn't be playing this G at all if I were using my first finger. And that's one clue that you know that we're in third position. So I've shifted my first finger onto G, extended to, oops, wait a minute, I just wrote a regular 2 in there. I am going to change this so that I know this is an extended 2 by putting a little X next to it. It's not a very good looking X, but I know what it is. I have to extend. So, on an up bow, I recommend practicing this slowly in single bows first, like this. 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2 on the A string. Once you're comfortable with the notes, then you can start to begin adding the bowing and the slurs, and it'll sound great. After we've played our E with second finger in extended third position on the A string, it's a lot to think about, right? After we've played this E, we have a rest. Cool. And we are going to go right back down to first position where we're very comfortable and play this with an open A. Not too bad, right? The only thing we need to make sure that we're careful of is that there is an extended first finger on that E flat. In case you have trouble remembering that, I recommend writing the fingering with a little extended one. You can put the X before the one or the X after the one. I've seen it done both ways, just as long as you remember what it is and what you're trying to do. Three measures before E, we're going to play that in first position. So we finished our figure. This is at measure 47. 2, 3, 4. And that's all there is to it. At measure E, these are all fairly simple octaves. And there are numerous ways you can finger them. Whatever you are comfortable doing, extending your first finger back for the B flat, and and then extending your second finger up for the lower B flat, that's just fine. This can also be done by extending your first finger back and playing with your third finger the B flat on the G string, which doesn't require as much of a stretch. I personally find that to be a little bit easier. Either way, make sure that they match very nicely. Also bear in mind that there are accents on beats 3 and 4. We're only at a mezzo piano dynamic, but they still need to come out. They should be strong. We want to have just a little bit of punch on those notes. Measure 56. After we've had our accented quarter notes, this is going to be our second shift. This only goes into second position and really isn't very difficult, but it's something to watch out for because we're going to have some slurs going on at the same time. Notice I've changed the bowing a little bit. We're going to slur 2 on these. So, I recommend this is how you change your bowing. All 3 of these notes are slurred together. That's going to be difficult to play, and there's really no reason that we need to do it because we want to wind up back on a down bow here at measure 58. I'm going to start here and work backwards. Here's my down bow. If I can hold the paper still. A nice clear down bow at the beginning of measure 58. Now here, I've already started this with a down bow. And here's an up bow. So I know I'm going to be on a down bow at the beginning of measure 57. I'm going to decide to slur these 2 notes. So I'm going to just draw a little slur there. And then to make sure that I don't forget, I'm going to draw an up bow above the C. That's going to set everything up so that I can play this very nicely. And be ready. Always remember, write in as many things as you can possibly think to write in. That way, you won't be caught by surprise at the time of the performance. Our next spot that we need to pay a little bit of close attention to is at measure 63. That's on the top of page 2, second to last measure, and is right here. Notice, this is also going to be in third position. So I need to play this on the D string. I'll be coming from playing G with my 4th finger. I'll shift, but here I don't have to extend because the B is flat. So I just stay right there. 1, 3, 4, open. Then for the next G, I will shift back and just play it with my 4th finger. And the F sharp, and back to G. I'll do that one more time slowly so that you can see it. Starting from measure 63, first beat. 4th finger G. Shift. 1, 3, 4. Open. 4. 3, 4. At tempo, it'll be more like this. Back to measure G, also known as measure 66. We're back at pizzicato here, and again, we might play this where we let the pizzicato ring, or we might play it where we stop the pizzicato a little bit. Whichever way to go, Mr. Tusi will let you know and direct you and tell you how he wants to hear that done. The only thing to watch out for here is in measure 68, we have a G sharp. This is where we are going to have to extend our first finger back. I'm going to start from measure 68, beat 1. We can cheat this one a little bit. Technically, we don't really have to do a traditional extension. We just need to make sure that our hand moves to exactly the right place when we're playing the G sharp and the A. The next place that we need to pay attention to is at letter H. It's very similar to the beginning. We have our melodic figures happening, but notice the key has changed. We no longer have a B flat, so we don't have to extend our first finger. This makes it a little easier and more comfortable for us. I'll start playing at letter H. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. A couple of things to pay attention to here. 1, I'm starting all of these figures with a down bow. I strongly recommend writing bowings into your part, like this. Measure H, beat 2, down bow. From here, nothing slurs and nothing really changes, so I could just say, I'm going to remember that's a down bow and play everything as it comes, which means I'm not going to change. It will always go down, up, down, up, down, up. But if you find yourself getting turned around or adding unnecessary slurs, which happens from time to time, go ahead and write more of the bowings in as you see you need them. That's probably a little bit too much, but if it helps, go ahead and do it. At the very least, I would write, oh yeah, I'm going to start this with a down bow here. And on measure 86, I'm going to start that with a down bow too. Also remember, in the key signature that we have changed to, which is G major, it only has an F sharp. C is not sharp, so this should be played with second finger. Be very careful of that one because that can make the whole piece sound terrible, and we don't want that to happen. Back to measure 86. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Now, Mr. Boersma made a little bit of a mistake there, and this is why. I was thinking about the fact that there are 2 up bows here. That's a little bit confusing, but it is in fact what we want to do. And again, I recommend you write this into your part. We're going to play up, down, up, up, down, up, down, up. And we will start again with our figure of down bows, starting on every second beat. I'll play the passage from H until measure I. Right before measure I, you're going to hear a slight change in the rhythm of what is probably written in your part. Pay close attention. I'm starting 1 before measure H. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. happened one measure before I. You'll notice in the part that I have written in front of me, I have penciled in a slightly different rhythm than what's marked in the part. This is because Mr. Tusi would like us to play this as if it were a 16th note, a very short, as it's written in the original part. It's an 8th note, which would sound like this. It doesn't sound very different, does it? Not when our part is by itself, but when we add it to the rest of the orchestra, it's going to make a lot of difference. So make sure you're counting. Beat 1 is a quarter note. The second beat is going to be treated as if it is a dotted 8th note. And that means you would count it for 3 16th notes. I've written this into my part, you'll notice. I have a dot next to my 8th note, and I've added just a little bit of a flag above the flag of the 8th note marked in the part. And that's going to tell me that I want to play this very short. Also, I want to make sure that I start that 16th note with an up bow. I'm going to play the measure before I for you one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. The rest of it continues on and is not terribly difficult. Notice that I'm playing the quarter notes nice and long and full. And the 8th notes are true 8th notes here, not the 16th notes, like what we changed before letter I. At measure 105, I have some 8th notes marked with tenutos, and that simply means we want to give a little more weight and length to them. Gives it a little more drama. Also, you'll notice in measure 105, I have an E flat. That's fairly simple to deal with. You can either extend or shift your hand back, either way, because we're going to be playing an open D right after those. I'll demonstrate. Measure 105. Something a little bit strange happened there at measure 113. I don't know if you noticed or if you were watching my bow, but I wound up backwards. I want to start that first beat of measure 113 with the down bow. So let's see if we can figure out how we can get to it. That's a down bow. Then the one before it must be an up bow. Then that must be a down bow, up bow, down bow. Interesting. Then this is an up bow. But that's not what happened at all. I wound up on a down bow there. Down, up, down, up, down. So we're going to need to change something in our bowing here. I hope you were paying attention to how I figured that out. That's going to be important for you as you move forward with your cello playing. For now, I'm just going to show you that this is going to be a down bow, the first beat of measure 112. We are going to retake the bow and play another down bow here on beat 3. That will let the 8th note sound very rhythmic and have the accents in the right place where we might want to hear them. I will play it to demonstrate. Notice I've also made some changes to the bowing on the last 2 measures of the piece. I have broken these 2 16th notes out so that they are played together in a single up bow, and the final note of the piece will be played with a down bow, so it can have a nice strong accent. That's all for Por una cabeza. Good luck. If you have any questions, feel free to find me or contact me. And remember, practice slowly. That's going to be the fastest way to learn it.